So we are now a week deep into the administration of Donald Trump, and it has been quite a whirlwind of a week. There's no real need to retrod over the many discussed points about his narcissism, his thin skin, his executive orders, and the cabinet nominees who are currently being confirmed by the Senate despite horrible problems with their qualifications and their conflicts of interest. What concerns me today, and why I'm making this video, is Republicans who seem content to go along to get along, and the danger that puts us in, and the irony that the party that frequently claims its fiscal and military responsibility is so much greater than that of the Democrats, feeding into and making a horrible situation worse. If you haven't heard, China has now moved nuclear-capable missiles that have a range that could hit the US close to the Russian border. And they've done this in response to the bombastic and over-the-top language being used by Donald Trump, which has put them on edge. Let's also remember that Donald Trump had a meeting with the Mexican president canceled by the Mexican president, despite Trump's later claims to the contrary, due to a proposed 20% import tax on Mexican goods in order to pay for the wall that the majority of Americans and the majority of Mexicans do not want, simply to assuage his ego and to make his proclamations of Mexico paying for the wall true, despite how logistically infeasible that has been from the beginning. Why is that important? Because other countries have taken notice, and there are already rumors of trade wars with Mexico and others, because this is not the way that a civilized, modern nation behaves. If you don't believe that these brute force tactics are problematic, or that they're what Trump is pursuing, I would urge you to look at the fact that Trump's decorating of his Oval Office began with putting Andrew Jackson's image in the Oval Office. If you don't know much about American history and about President Andrew Jackson, I highly suggest you look it up. He was an extraordinary populist president, which many people have said is a good thing. But when you look at his record, defying the Supreme Court, slaughtering thousands of Native Americans in his quest to build his legacy and grow the United States at the expense of all others, it is not a path that we need to go down again. It left us in a worse place as a nation, and it is a stain on our history that we'll probably never be able to remove. Trump using that as his guiding star, Mitch McConnell at the Republican retreat this week in Philadelphia. By the way, props to Philadelphia for getting out to the streets and protesting peacefully, and props to the Philadelphia Police Department for facilitating that and creating an atmosphere where people's voices can be heard in safety. But Mitch McConnell at this retreat was lauding the fact that Trump wanted to emulate and be like Andrew Jackson. That should concern all of us, but particularly it should truly concern Republicans and conservatives who try to claim the mantle of responsibility. We are not being responsible. The fact that the head of the Department of State has close enough ties to Russia to receive the highest award that Putin can give to a non-military civilian, that should say something. The fact that that same department or Secretary of State worked for a company that currently has a multi-billion-dollar project on hold due to sanctions, and we start hearing that memos are being circulated to justify the removal of these sanctions with Russia, despite the fact that they weren't put in place because of the election meddling. They were put in place because Russia invaded a sovereign country in Ukraine. That's why we have those sanctions in place, and to be discussing removing those sanctions, it's mind-boggling. And not from a partisan approach. It's mind-boggling from an American approach. It makes no sense, except and only if you want Russia to do better, if you want to encourage those actions, those aggressive military actions. And now we're going to basically bankroll the country because we're talking about dropping sanctions before they have done anything to show that they are going to stop this aggressive behavior? Why would a responsible president, why would a responsible Congress, why would a responsible citizen of this country, knowing our history, knowing what is going on in the world in the context of Russia's actions, how could one do that and be a responsible person? The answer is you can't. And that is the danger. So I know I said it before, and I'm sure I might be preaching to the wrong audience, but for the love of all that is good, it is time for Republicans to stop going along to get along. I'm not saying you need to join with Democrats to support the ACA. You have issues with it. I don't agree with you. But that is a domestic policy issue that we can argue about and fight about. We can use the states as vessels of experimentation to try to find a middle road where we can all move forward and be happy with our domestic policy issues. But when it comes to facing the rest of the world, we must be a united front, and we must have a clear and consistent policy that does not put our allies and our friends around the world at risk. And now with China moving these weapons to the border with Russia, puts us directly at risk. That is the result of these policies. That is the result of this president. And most importantly, it is the result of this Congress and other Republican citizens for turning a blind eye. If you know a Republican, if you know a conservative, please talk with them, plead with them. It is not that you guys are going to come to agreement on issues like abortion. It's not that you're going to come to agreement on issues like healthcare. It's not that you are going to come to agreement on issues like gun control. But we can absolutely come to an agreement that we cannot let a strongman dictator like Vladimir Putin run roughshod over our friends and allies. And for what? What do we gain from it? Nothing. All we do is put everything that we stand for at risk. So please, I beg you, make your voices heard. And if you have someone you can talk to try to get them to see the light in this particular area so that they can call and reach out to their senators and their congressmen, since apparently those congressmen are not listening to the liberals in their areas. They're not listening to the people they view as the enemy. Reach out to them as a friend, as someone who's a member of their party who respects them, and say, listen, I'm with you on everything, but on this issue of American safety, we have to take a stand. These responsible conservatives were loud and vocal during the primaries. They were saying things about Donald Trump that even liberal people now aren't saying. You had the spine then. Where did it go? Is it all about simply winning? Has this come down to a game? Because elections aren't a game, ladies and gentlemen. They are what steer us as a nation. And if we want this American experiment to continue to defy the odds and be the shining light on the hill, to be an example to all other democracies which have stumbled and fallen, then we have to correct this. We have got to course correct this, and we can only do it if people start being responsible. We can do it. But only if we actually commit. The resistance has begun. Let's hope that it's enough.